Good morning, folks, and welcome to this Sunday, the 24th of May 2020. Not the year any of us were expecting, is it? This is What Lies in the Sunday Telegraph, a weekly exploration of what is in Australia's number one selling newspaper. So, for those who are new, it's just going to be me reading the paper, making some hopefully insightful and droll commentary along the way. It's not for everyone, but some people seem to like it, so keep your comments to yourself unless they're positive, in which case we can't wait to hear from you. Okay, what is on the cover of today's Sunday Telegraph? Mission accomplished. NRL is go. We're back, baby. I wonder why they felt the need to go with that weird future font like it's a Terminator movie. Oh, I'll be back. I get it. Okay, thanks. Thanks for your help with that. 20-page reboot special. Fans can rejoice as our teams prepare for footy's return. You know what this demonstrates more than anything, this whole saga with the football, is how vitally important sport is. Not to you and me. No. Not to ordinary people. They don't give a damn about us, as has been evidenced by every breach of the health rules by these self-indulgent, very wealthy bastards. Now, don't get me wrong, self-indulgent wealthy bastards are running rampant across the landscape right now. I'm not singling out the sportos for that. It produces for News Limited an endless stream of things that look like news, that is new information that they can convince enough people to care about that they don't have to cover anything that actually matters, like who's got all the money and what they're doing with it and why they won't let you have any of it. Sport is, religion's a terrible distraction. It doesn't change over millennia very much. But sport, you can keep telling him that so-and-so's got a knee niggle and so-and-so had a great game and so-and-so doesn't think the other so-and-so's doing a good job. It just fills it up and you keep getting more and feeling like you're engaged and informed and you can discuss things with your mates in the pub when they finally let you back into the pub. Let's face it, these groups of 10 and 20, it's a bit of fun for those who get in, but it's hardly a social gathering. Well, it's no more than a social gathering than meeting in your backyard. Anywho, let us progress. Maybe there'll be something news-like further in. No, 2-page wraparound of Harvey Norman ads, trying to convince us to buy bigger TVs. I've definitely come close to weakening. Right, it's great to have footy back. They haven't actually played a game yet, but I guess they're just trying to get us excited. Promises more excitement and controversy than before, writes Nick Walshaw. I guarantee you it's going to look just like a game of rugby league when they actually play it. Buzz Rothfield has found up 20 reasons why I'm excited. His job relies on convincing you to be excited, so on your Buzz, I'm glad you got to 20. We are go for the greatest game on earth. Utterly unsupported hyperbole. Right. So that's a wraparound, and I think we've got the flavour of it, don't you? I think we can put that to one side. And what have we got? Oh, news. We've got an exclusive interview with Hugh Jackman. Isn't that newsy? A homegrown superstar on ISO binging, how TV delivered the role of his career and why he fears a loneliness epidemic. I'm glad Hugh Jackman's giving us his views on all these important issues. Right, exclusive train and bus patrols to keep commuters apart. Rush Hour Virus Squad. An army of security guards will patrol train stations and public transport hubs across Sydney from tomorrow to make sure commuters and school students are keeping their distance from each other. Authorities are expecting a dramatic rise in commuter numbers this week, and the beefed up security is to catch people not observing social distancing and putting others at risk. You mean trying to get to work on a crowded train that you have no choice about? While the Telegraph's writers and editors still work from home. Anyone who can afford to still works from home, but you go out there and play some virus roulette. Be a warrior for your country. Yeah, at least in the world wars, the British aristocracy put their money where their mouth was and put themselves in harm's way. Those days are far behind us. Normally we go through mixed picks, which is the things the editor has deemed to be the best things in his paper. Oh, why not? Okay, so the shows to binge. Don't waste your time channel surfing. Well, that's a hot tip for the aging Sunday Telegraph readers. The things we do in isolation that we best forget, a body and soul DIY beauty special. Isolation transformation, a new fat blaster diet. Right, celebrities unlock their secret holiday destinations close to home. This is the travel magazine's run out of international travel to talk about. All right, we got the happy story of brave COVID survivor Henry Karpik. Dangerous stuff, because no one's shown any evidence that bravery or toughness is general healthiness is what gets you through this, as far as I can tell, and that's not an option for everyone. So, to suggest that those who have died lacked bravery is not a place I'd be going. I'd be saying lucky COVID survivor. Okay. Meet the baby-faced computer nerd from Canberra who created a worldwide privacy stink after collecting 3 billion of your photos off social media and selling them to police. Special report on page 32. Okay, and what Michael Ibrahim planned to do with the spoils of his drug trade. And then they're reminding us that there's a free glossy mag. It's Stella, it's like Vogue, but it's free with the paper. Page 3 tells us that Sonia Kruger is going to tell us in the Stella magazine how she shocked the Big Brother cast. Kruger's a mum. Right, schools have been given the power to banish radicals. Extremist, predatory, or violent students can now be banned from schools. Sad story, Ben Pike reporting, I couldn't fix this. Dad's sorrow over his son's death. A truck driver who accidentally ran over and killed his 5-year-old son says he failed to protect his little boy. In a horrific accident at a Picton trucking yard late on Friday afternoon, Harrison Sproul was crushed by a truck driven by his father, Doug. Well, that is indeed a absolutely tragic story. Ben Pike on the road death beat then tells us of a tragic crash barrier dividing a suburb. A painful debate about the need for a safety barrier at the scene where an allegedly drunk driver mowed down and killed 4 children has splintered the community and unleashed a strong rebuke from the young victims' families. I don't know what sort of arsehole you have to be to complain about extra safety at a spot like that. It seems our society is full of those sorts of arseholes. Dairy to finally rise from the ashes. Dairy farmers will be among the biggest winners from the state government's $140 million bushfire industry recovery package. Now, this is one that the car that got driven into a hijab store in Lakemba, we're told the driver has no memory. A painter who drove a high speed, I think they mean at high speed, into a hijab shop in Sydney's West and left 14 people injured, has told police he has no memory of the crash. Confusion still surrounds why 51-year-old Sabri Mustafa Nassar smashed his car through a stop traffic and played into the front of a bustling hijab house in Greenacre on Thursday afternoon. I assume they were appropriately socially distancing and not overly bustling. Okay, 2 pages, 6 and 7. Coke plot left lines in the sand. Court document reveals how remnants of an Olympian's failed cocaine plot have been washing ashore along the coast. So, before you get too worried, it's a Athens Olympics dual silver medal winning kayaker, Nathan Baggerly, and his brother Drew. In other news on this page, little Monty is a real trooper, says his mum. Salim Sensoy, 44, has been reported missing from the Glen Innes Correctional Centre, and police are searching for him. And a man has allegedly told police he locked his girlfriend outside on their hotel balcony minutes before she fell to her death, a 45-year-old woman from the Sutherland Shire. So the couple had been arguing, and he locked her outside on the hotel balcony. He claimed he returned to the balcony after a short time and the woman was gone. He was released without charge, pending further inquiries. I mean, at a guess, she was trying to climb to another balcony. But let's wait the findings on that one. Right, Hugh Jackman is pledging to help all the lonely people. That's big of him. I think watching Hugh's show is how he's offering to help you, which maybe isn't so great. Nothing wrong with Hugh Jackman. Right, a crime. Phone taps exclusive. 2 pages, 10 and 11. Buildings, a brothel, and big noting. Michael Ibrahim's fantasy plans to be a major Sydney player. Well, given the powerful people who would have been buying the drugs from him. There are going to be on-the-spot fines for shops selling contraband cigarettes. A blaze has engulfed a factory, so some news is snuck in at the bottom of page 11. This is in St. Peter's, Friday night. Cameron Adams tells us that the Powderfinger reunion was the gig we needed. Apparently performing on YouTube was a masterstroke. 90,000 people watched it live, which is a big number. Absolutely. But does not actually represent an enormous percentage of the population if they were a political party. They might be able to win 2 or 3 seats if they could concentrate those fans in the right place, but they're not going to win an election. They wouldn't trouble the Senate. So virus cops herd commuters. This is about public transport hotspots being policed. Okay, there's a little story on how food trucks are doing well because people can drive up to wherever they are and order, and they're not doing dine-in food, so they're kind of built for this. Brothels are calling for an end to the unfair bonk ban crippling livelihoods. They're offering to force clients to use the COVID Safe app. I can't see that, that flying. And offering to ban group sex. I mean, group sex is definitely a problem in a pandemic, but one person serially having sex with numerous people through the day also presents a real issue in a pandemic when we're trying to be socially distant. And obviously, sex work is not distant. I don't know how you go about policing that in the long term, particularly given that it's an industry that's used to operating outside the law when it has to. Okay, Annika Smethurst, as National Political Editor, informs us that grandparents will be told to stay away from the sidelines and physical barriers installed at canteens under new guidelines for community sport during COVID-19. I think the physical barriers are unrelated to the grandparents being told not to go to the sport, but given Annika's infantile writing, it's hard to tell. Oh, here's some good news. Tourism businesses hard hit by bushfires and COVID-19 are to receive a Christmas bonus, with cash left over from the government's JobKeeper scheme earmarked for the struggling sector. So instead of giving it to the workers, you're going to give it to the business owners. Could have given it to the casuals that missed out. Nope, business owners. Right, New South Wales Health Minister Brad Hazzard has 2 pages to tell us my worst fear is that second wave. Linda Silmanis says we should go from Zoom to the zoo. Taronga Zoo is preparing to reopen its doors next month. That's a grim little play on words to hang a story on. Conditions put on hold during lockdown erupt. Hospitals are set to be swamped by a wave of patients suffering from serious conditions that have been left to fester during the pandemic. Yep. Oh, the big question, can we have a sleepover yet? Oh, 2 pages, I can't wait to take off. Top reasons for domestic travel destinations. Commerce, come on. Particularly until New South Wales and Victoria get their community transmission completely under control, which is not the case right now. This is terrible ideas to make money for ourselves, isn't it? Alright, here's some breaking news. Melanie Burgess reports that a skill mix puts you ahead. Experts are predicting people with a broad range of skills will be favoured over specialists as Australia's job market evolves. Trouble is, specialists tend to also have those other broad skills. They're just actually really good at something useful. Right, the return is beaut news for salons. So beaut isn't because they're like beauty parlours. The unkempt and let's face it, hairy ISO look is on its way out, with New South Wales government giving beauticians and nail salons the green light to resume service on June 1. Right, now we have Henry Carpick's story, How I Sailed Through the Valley of Death. I think one walks through the Valley of Death, in fact. If you're sailing through a valley, it's what, a fjord or a loch. And that's no disrespect intended to Henry Carpick, who I have no animus against. It's just the shitty reporting, shitty writing, shitty newspaper. I'll give you a hug and the gift of life. Darcy with his little brother Henley. It's only thanks to Little Wings that these country kids can continue treatment. Oh, this is they're using a child to get bone marrow for the 17-month-old child, which, family's got to do what family's got to do. Jane Hansen worries that Australia is completely flattened the COVID-19 curve, but there is a new curse that experts are warning must be tackled, mental illness. Well, I don't think we have completely flattened the curve because Victoria and New South Wales have still got community transmission. Right, big spread on the Teddy Sheehan case. It's called Shot Down. PM torpedoes bid to give highest award to a war hero who died saving his mates. So this is relating to an incident in 1972 when HMAS Armidale was blown to pieces by Japanese airstrikes off the coast of East Timor. Teddy Sheehan, the artwork is quite famous in mill nerd circles. There's him on the burning deck, firing defiantly at the Japanese. According to legend, actually shot down 2 planes. Whether that actually happened is a bit more debatable, and there's an issue that the Australian Navy didn't do a very good job of ever applying for Victoria Crosses. There's never been a Victoria Cross awarded to an Australian sailor. and there's probably a few others deserving, and even Teddy Share might be deserving. I just have a problem with reopening these cases 70 years after the event, just because some people feel they've got the sads about it. Anyway, so insult to injury, the Daily Telegraph is still offering Sennheiser earbuds to new customers only. Bastards. Right, we've got a headline, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous, so lion. It's a story about lions, the cats. So Mogo, they're cleaning the teeth of the lions. So apparently someone is selling a women's libido product called Goldmax Pink that is actually just Viagra, and obviously without prescription. So, do what works for you, I guess. Wife in release appeal. The wife of an elderly Japanese doctor kidnapped by jihadists in Burkina Faso has appealed for her husband to be freed in a new video. Kenneth Elliott and his wife Jocelyn were seized in the West African country in January 2016, but she was released a month later. Speaking in French, Jocelyn Elliott, 88, a humanitarian worker, appealed to the group to release her 86-year-old husband when you see fit. The snitch is talking about the great workplace perks offered by cocaine dealers. Dealer drug syndicates are a dime a dozen these days, but one group in Western Sydney threw in a few perks for a competitive edge. Rasija Adilovich and her burly beau, Gabrielle Issa, ran a lucrative cocaine supply business from their cosy Campsie unit with a bevy of delivery drivers at their disposal. Among them was Ahmed Khan. Khan was provided with a drug phone, and each shift he picked up bags of cocaine from the Kingpin couple before awaiting instructions for delivery. For every bag of cocaine with 0.5 grams of drugs inside delivered, Khan earned himself $40, which is not enormously more than pizza delivery, really, is it? Reimbursed the fuel costs, covered their meals on shift, and threw in the mobile phone. Well, you got to manage the infosec, don't you? Between mid-February and mid-March last year, Khan collected $37,000 from the deliveries. Well, they must have all been very busy. Alright, so they're making fun of Fadi Ibrahim having the wrong image show up in Google, which might not be an accident at all. Fadi might well have arranged that. The Source, political gossip with Annika and Linda. Last exit for Jonestown. Stand back if you don't want to get mown down by the stampede of Liberal politicians vying to share Alan Jones' final moments of airtime before retiring from 2GB. Family, Communities and Disability Services Minister Gareth Ward was up last week with one of his colleagues describing the chat as a mutual appreciation society. Gareth Ward has promised to sue me if I ever talk about him in future, so I'll keep my powder dry on that one. Okay, so there's a piece here called Boycott Backfires. Nationals Deputy Leader David Littleproud may regret calling for a consumer boycott after Wesfarmers closed up to 167 Target outlets, many in the bush. Littleproud encouraged would-be shoppers to vote with their wallets and not to go near them. But his call has angered some of his Liberal colleagues in Canberra, given Wesfarmers has chipped in more than $100,000 to the federal branch of the Liberal Party in recent years. Really, is that how we measure these things now? So they're saying what a stupid plonker Littleproud is for not accounting for how much corrupt money has flowed from these people. I'm criticising people for that now. The forensic detective who always gets his body, never digs straight down. This is the Eye Catch Killers podcast that they're still basically promoting. Special investigation. This is the Canberra hacker. Secret genius to swipe billions of personal pictures and details for profit. Former Canberra schoolboy Juan Ton That is the man behind the New York-based company Clearview AI, which has amassed the world's largest facial recognition database. A 32-year-old gender-fluid former model and musician, Ton That is now the face of a very modern debate about privacy in the digital age. Right, they're actually selling their product to law enforcement, which I would have thought the Telegraph would love, but apparently they're a bit nervous when it could be them. So apparently cricket's in a turf war. There's more praise of how great Peter V'landys is, because he's saved footy and just happens to have saved Foxtel, which just happens to own this newspaper. It's not related, though. It's total integrity to this. So we've got the miracle survivors of the horror jet crash in Karachi, which was, certainly, it looked appalling. A racist cookie attack. A young black girl who was collecting letters from her grandmother's mailbox was grabbed and accused of being a thief by a white neighbour, who then tried to make the problems go away by offering the child cookies. This is in New York. Strike hits IS leaders. American-led forces and their Kurdish allies killed 2 regional Islamic State group leaders in a raid in eastern Syria this week. That's very interesting. The Kurds are still working with the Americans there. I'm sure they'll be betrayed again soon. Again in New York, a man has been charged with tying up and sexually abusing ponies at an equestrian centre. Police said staff often found ponies with cords tied around their legs just above the hoof. You'd think after the first time you'd take some action on that, wouldn't you? Still from New York, which is generating a suspicious amount of interesting world news. A man confessed to stabbing his father to death on a live Zoom call after police found him trying to wash blood off his body with Dr. Pepper soda. Thomas Scully Powers, 32, nearly decapitated 72-year-old Dwight Powers as horrified call participants scrambled to dial 911. Anything that's got Zoom in the title at the moment, isn't it? It's like Facebook 10 years ago. There's a story from Brazil where things are horrific. Latin America's feeling the virus heat. While Europe, Asia, and North America are slowly opening after their virus lockdowns, Latin America is being smashed by a wave of infections and deaths. Mexico and Brazil reported record counts of new cases and deaths almost daily this week, fueling criticism of their presidents, who have limited shutdowns to keep the economy moving. Here we go. Okay, possibly the biggest news in this paper, Boris to pull the plug on Huawei in UK. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is reportedly planning to reduce the involvement of Chinese company Huawei in Britain's 5G network in the wake of the coronavirus crisis. That would be the stupidest reason to do it. There were many good reasons to be concerned about using Huawei's gear, but I don't think we're going to catch corona from it, do you? I imagine they're just throwing it in there to justify what's a backflip for them. Now, speaking of backflips, headline, Biden's blacks male backflip. Joe Biden has apologized after he told a prominent black radio host that African Americans who vote for President Donald Trump ain't black. Says the whitest man who ever lived. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee quickly went into damage control, which was interpreted as presuming black Americans would vote for him, and was naturally seized upon by Trump and other Republicans. In a call with the US Black Chamber of Commerce, Biden said he would never take the African American community for granted. I shouldn't have been such a wise guy, Biden said. No one should have to vote for any party based on their race or religion or background. The Biden-Trump race is, it's not even a lesser of two evils, is it? It's really a race to the bottom. So, celebrity property news tells us that the pandemic has hit paddo prices. Peter Credlin, what's she saying now? States make pain worse. It would be a real shame if Australia almost entirely escaped the health consequences of this pandemic only to suffer the full force of its economic hit. With just over 100 dead, new infections coming down towards single figures, and a mere 39 people in hospital, we haven't just flattened the curve, we've crushed it. From where we thought we would be to where we are now, all credit to everyone who's made this happen. But instead of taking the win and ending the You idiot. Instead of taking the win and ending the shutdown to minimise further job losses, the majority of states seem gripped by health analysis paralysis, making the economic pain inevitably worse. You know what? The second wave is what's going to make it worse. Oh, God. Just parrots any old garbage. Right. Peter also warns us, China's cash leads to the wrong road. China's leaders have taken to heart Sun Tzu's advice to win without fighting. Why have to beat someone when you can buy them instead? The whole point of Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative is to make other countries economically dependent and thus strategically subservient to China. Under the BRI from Europe to Africa and our own region, Chinese money and workers are building ports, railways and government buildings to curry favour with local leaders and bring weak economies into China's orbit. Oh, isn't that terrible? And then she's using it to belt down Andrews because he is willing to take Chinese money to build infrastructure. Here we go. Canberra's Foreign Investment Review Board must not allow Victoria to become an economic colony of communist China. This country's always been reliant on foreign investment to get things done. The price that the Americans and the British exacted in exchange for their investment, was pretty horrific. You can visit the War Memorial here in Canberra when it reopens to see just what we paid for that. There's a thumbs up. British PM Boris Johnson is now rethinking the UK's decision to allow China's Huawei to build its new 5G network. And thumbs down to well-paid referees whose quibbling over money and vaccinations has complicated the NRL restart. Other people's concerns are unimportant to Ms. Credlin. Okay, more opinion. Peter Gleeson, that's Peter, not to be confused with PETA, tells us that China is a big bad bully. Piers Ackerman tells us we're all in this together except for the Big Panda and its Labour Party fan club. At least it's not an evil panda this week. Tim Heffernan says, struggling, me too, it's okay to seek help. He's the Deputy Mental Health Commissioner for New South Wales. Apparently he checked into a Sydney hospital over Easter because he was feeling struggling with his bipolar disorder. Well, it's probably actually the most helpful message in this newspaper. Claire Harvey tells us, who cares, we do, it seems. A bit uncertain there, Claire. Did you know Australians cared this much about the elderly, enough to siphon all the petrol from the economy and pour sand into the fuel tanks of consumerism? I didn't. I thought I was a little unusual in actually enjoying old people's stories and the way they... Oh, geez, she's pandering to the elderly readership of the newspaper there. Blah. The Sunday Telegraph is editorialising against Chop Chop tobacco. Throughout human history, high levels of excise have led to a black market, and this is no different. Duncan Lay's expressing his excitement for the Snyder cut of the Justice League movie. I see no way in which that steaming turd is going to be improved by Zack Snyder's unlimited freedom. Some of the disjointedness might be fixed, though. Right, the Barefoot Investor is actually tackling something serious. We may be locked up, but our gambling problem is still out of control thanks to the banks indulging problem punters. So the health hacker is offering advice no one's going to follow. Limit your alcohol to just one glass a day. Trouble with that, as many a drinker has observed, is that after the first glass, the second glass gets a lot harder to say no to. Much easier in general to not drink on a day. Insider Hibernation has a new Blake Lively movie, The Rhythm Section. It gets 2 stars. Kirsten Stewart's Underwater gets 3 stars. Julia Garner's The Assistant gets 3.5 stars. Apparently Jesse Eisenberg has been volunteering in a domestic violence shelter, which is very noble of him. So Annette Sharp brings us the news that Ross Dillon has settled her legal stouch with stepmother Blanche Delpeuget. This is for the Hawke estate, Bob Hawke's estate. Apparently Ben Fordham has yet to sign his breakfast contract, replacing Alan Jones. Somehow in the rush to promote Fordham to breakfast, these talks taking place during a flurry of phone calls over one weekend earlier this month. It seems a new contract with Nine Radio has not yet materialised nor been signed off on. That would be very embarrassing if they... And obviously Fordham knows that. Kerry Parnell admits that her lockdown baking has not gone well. It's gone well in that it's made her fat. Yeah, you and the rest of us. So they're calling caveman chic. Chris Hemsworth apparently has been a fashion lead walking around barefoot in Byron Bay. And then the back page tells us that there's football. So, yeah, football is good and it's back, and so you don't need to worry your pretty little heads about money or politics. And that's the news this week. Oh, China's bad. China's very bad. Just keep hating on. Being afraid of China is definitely the way to go. And this message brought to you by the US State Department.